Hello, beautiful artists and beginners. I'm playing with watercolor pencils today and thought I would just share that with you. So the watercolor pencils I've been playing with, I have several, but these are the ones I have been playing with for probably a couple years now. I really like them. I have all different brands. I'm not a big fan of the ink tints. I know a lot of people like them and they're really expensive. They're a little bit too staining and they are vibrant. I will give them that. But I love these. I have several. I also have an Arctic set that's pretty good. So these are going to come with, these are what I'm using today. They're going to come, this is a 72 set, by the way. They're going to come with 3 palettes. So kind of that cool blues. You've got some neutrals and let's see if I can get that out of, oh, I'm flipping them everywhere, folks. My gosh, why can't I get that out? It's not usually that hard. I've got some pinks. Now mine, because I use them a lot, they're a little bit mixed up, but some pinks and browns, and then more greens and yellows, reds, oranges. So that's what I'm using today. I'm going to go ahead and set all these out so I can get to them pretty easily. And they come in this really cool little tin, which I like because I love anything portable. So I'm just going to show you a couple ways I use them. I do have other videos on this, by the way. So you can, I'll try and remember to put my playlist in the description below, and I'll put a link to these Artista ones. I really like the Artista brand. These aren't too soft, but they are soft. I think they even actually say soft leads on them. And you want to be really careful because especially if you get these wet, and we're going to go into that in a second, you know, they can bend easy, they can break easy, and you definitely don't want to accidentally break them off in the middle of the pencil. So the core, this is the core, it goes all the way through the pencil. Another reason why when I sharpen mine, I will, oh goodness, I don't know if you were watching the other day, but I opened this the wrong day and all the pencil lead fell out like I just did again. So I don't know what's going on with that. But what I normally will do is I turn my sharpener around my pencil. I don't know why. I learned that years ago and it just kind of stuck with me. So I am using, by the way, cold press paper. So it's a little textured, which, you know, the watercolor pencil is going to get down into the paper. And unless you have a really stiff brush, it's going to be a little harder to lift out, but I like that texture. So that's just me, my preference. If you were to use a cold press, it's going to be a little smoother, but it's going to dry quicker than the cold press. The cold press is thicker. This is also, actually, coincidentally, this is the Artista brand. So anyway, I thought that was worth mentioning. So let's get right into, and like I said, there's a couple different ways you can use these. So the first way is really, I think, the most common. Let me get a bright color here. Let's go for a purple. So there's a purple. So the first way would just be, of course, you know, you can color in whatever you're going to be creating. And if you notice, I just automatically, I use the side of my pencil. I don't like going in on the tip because I feel like it could break off. These are quite soft, so just be careful of that. And then I'm going to dip my brush in water and scrape it off a bit. And look how beautifully these spread. So that's how I really can tell if they're a watercolor pencil that is quality. See how good it spreads? The pigment is really nice coming off of there. Now, if I wanted to do a blended approach, I could do, let's just go for, let's pick purple and blue, and let's blend those together. So you could use this for a few different things. Say I'm blending a flower petal and I want to blend some blue into that, and I'm actually going to do a petal so I won't get too particular here, and I want to blend those in together. So let's just do that. Take my damp brush and I'm going to go just back and forth, but look at how beautiful that is. Isn't that pretty? And the other thing is too, with watercolors, for the most part, what I have found is, you know, you have that little bit of time to work with them, but once they dry, they're a little difficult to lift or, you know, any of those things. They say you can re-wet them and then, you know, lift and do some things. I have used all the different brands. I haven't found that so much. So you can do something like that. Another really fun technique is you could use like a blue here. Let's see if that's blue. Midnight blue. And I like that they have the numbers on them and the name because I swatch everything out. So I could put here, there's my blue, and then I could add, let's add a pinky type of red to it. And we can create a really cool, fun purple. So I do like watercolor pencils for that. See how nice that is? And I can pull that out a bit, get lighter and lighter, but keep in mind, once it dries, I won't have as much access to re-wetting that and pulling it out like that. So just something to be kind of aware of. And by the way, I don't typically, again, this is just me, paint huge areas, use my watercolor pencils. I'm going to use them for smaller areas. Now, I'm going to show you one technique that you can do. I don't typically do this because I don't like getting that lead too soft. That's why I don't typically dip them in water, because keep in mind, this is watercolor based. So if this was to set in water, it would dissolve and then it would go down into the core. And even taking a wet brush, I do this occasionally, but I don't know if you can see that, but it's already bending the tip a bit. But that is a way you can use them. Just be really careful. So you can do that, and it's actually a nice way to use them to kind of glaze over and do some things like that. Again, I've seen people dip them in water and use them. Not my thing. That's just me. Another way you can use them is, let's just grab a red. Let me find a good red here. And using it on its side. So say I'm doing like a sunset, and then I'm going to go in with like a light orange, or let's use a yellow and let them blend together into a beautiful orange. So I typically will go from light to dark, just my thing. So I'm going to start wetting this, and look how beautiful. Again, working kind of quick because these do dry. Just rinsing my brush, but look at how gorgeous that is. Isn't that pretty? And they create really lovely washes. And this is going to dry pretty quickly. So that's another way to use it. Now, I could go in and it might be already too dry. So say I wanted to lift some clouds. I can do that a bit. But of course, the darker the color, the better. Now let's just put in, like, say, a ocean down below here. There we go. Maybe a little bit of this light blue. Wet my brush, scrape it off. Now this time I actually went from dark to light, but look how pretty that is. So you can get these really beautiful blends like that. And then I could even go in after, and I'll show you, and use maybe the black to mark in some little birds, maybe a little mountain or palm tree here. So lots of fun things you can do with that. Let me show you, let's just draw a leaf. Where's my pencil? Here it is. So we've got, this is straight off the tip. This is kind of blending two colors. This was actually blue and red and it made that purple. This is blending two colors like this. Now we could even go back into that and let's just add a little more purple. So you want to make sure it's dry, which you can go into it wet, but I don't typically do that. So this is still kind of wet. I could go into this and it would just kind of blend. Maybe that dried already. Maybe soften that a bit. Anyways, back to this. So I'm going to, I just wanted to maybe darken the bottom there, working kind of quick because I don't want that hard line. So that's kind of layering onto what I already had there, which I kind of like. So that's wet. I could go in, oops, that's the blue. Let's use the purple. And be really careful here though, because again, when that lead gets wet, it's going to be really soft. And if you press too hard, you're going to really damage that tip. And you don't want to do that. So there we go. So beautiful layering can be achieved with those. I was going to draw a leaf because I think this is, I love, one of the things I love with pencils is blending the colors. So we've got a leaf here. And here's our center stem. So let's go into that with the green. Let me find a kind of just a regular old green, kind of like a sap green. What do they call that? Jungle green. Let's see. Forest green, that's a little darker. I want like a sap green. Not that it really matters, but let's see what this one is. Moss green. I think I'm gonna go for this one. And I'm just gonna go in and kind of using, you know, again, not right on the tip. And I'm going to color this in. Now, the darker I color it in, obviously, the more pigment I'm putting on the paper here. So I'm going to color one side, kind of this dark mossy green. And then I'm going to go into the other side. Let's go into the other side with like a blue. I think that could be really pretty. And I'm even crossing over a little bit into the green. Trying to use my pencil on its side. So now we've got these two gorgeous colors. Maybe even mix this one a tiny bit. And now watch how pretty. So I've got my brush. And look how beautiful. So I put quite a bit of pencil on there, and that's why it's so vibrant. But look at that, how gorgeous. Isn't that pretty? I love that. So I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to go down the center with a dark green. Let's find a dark green here. Let's see. Here's a dark green. That is fern green. I think I picked that one up earlier. That's fine. We'll use that one. The other thing is too, is if my leads are a little damp, these are pretty dry, but if they were damp, I don't set them into my container until they're dry, because you can see here, one of my pencils did this. I put it in here and it left some of the pencil lead on there. So I just make sure they're really nice and dry before I put them back in my container. Because again, they're really soft, and you definitely don't want to ever break off your core inside your pencil, because it would kind of ruin the pencil. Okay, so let's go into this one. I think it's dry, pretty dry. And let's use a black. Let's get my black here. That is, yep, that's black. And I can go in and draw in some little birds. So it's good for that. Can you see those? I'm so careful about how much pressure I put. So we've got some of that. So that's a good way to use it. I could also go in and add in kind of like a horizon line back there. And I could even go in and maybe add some little hills like that. And now go in with my brush and just smooth those out. And they really do blend so nicely. That's another reason I love the Artistos. They really blend nicely. Isn't that nice? And let's see if we can add a little bit of the yellow just to look like it might be reflecting. Now, in this case, I could have left some white area here. This is kind of an afterthought, but I wanted to show you because I love how these can glaze. So I've added some yellow. Now it's going to turn a little green because yellow and blue make green. So really it would have been nicer if I left this space kind of bare and then added it in, and it wouldn't have that green look. So just something kind of fun to play with. Now let's come back to the leaf. So it's pretty dry, and what I want to do now, same with this, we'll go into that too. And I'm going to take my forest green. Let's see if that's dark enough. Let's use it. Yeah, that's a good one. And I'm just going to create that vein in the middle, being careful of how much pressure I'm putting on there. And then maybe some little veins like that. So another great way to use that. And then maybe I want to add, I always like adding some brown to the base of my leaves. I just think it's kind of a cool look. So I've got some brown there. Now I'll re-wet that. So glazing with pencils is really fun. The other thing that's nice about pencils, I bring them a lot when I'm traveling because they're just easy. They're easy to bring with you. So I'm going into this now that it's wet. So see how much darker that comes out because it's wet. And then I'll just go in and kind of smooth it out with a damp brush. And I just think that's really pretty. I could smooth it out a bit more as long as it's still kind of damp. I could even go to the brush, pick up a tiny bit, and put that in there. Like that. So there you go, beautiful blendability. Now, say in this little petal, I want to put some dark lines. So let's find a dark purple. Let's see if I can find a darker purple than what I have on there. This one looks pretty dark. Twilight Purple. So this is another fun way to use this, is I could go around. Well, it's not very dark purple, is it, guys? Let's see if I can find a darker purple. Making sure, because it looks a little bent. Another way, by the way, to sharpen these is with the little sandpaper sharpener. I'll show you that in just a second. I'll go pull mine out. Or even with an X-Acto blade, which I don't typically use. I have one, but to me it takes off too much. So I'm just gonna go around the edges and add some lines. I could even go around these edges and just add some little detail in there. I'm not a big detail person, so I don't typically do that. But let me show you this. This is really fun if you were going to do, say, a, oh gosh, I've seen it used different ways, a little field. So you could get that wet. Let me grab my little sandpaper. This is pretty handy. And I could say I wanted to do some purple flowers. I could sand this over, and look at that. Now I did it a little darker because I wanted you to really see it. So that will end up spreading. So that's another fun technique for like a field of flowers. And while that's wet, I can actually go in and kind of spread that around. So I could make some little flowers out of it. There you go. But I think it's kind of a cool little technique. I have seen people, and now some of you, I know I'm going to get feedback on this, and I don't usually use this, but I've seen this done, so I'm going to share it with you. Can do, this isn't, I don't typically use it this way, but I've seen it done. So let's just wet a background, and then I could go in there with my sandpaper and just scratch off a bit. And you can actually use your finger, like say I wanted to do some clouds, and kind of spread it around. I don't have a problem with it, but I've had people say, and I get it, you know, you don't want that getting into your skin. If it's a CAD color, CAD can be dangerous. So I get it, but I wanted to at least show it to you. I think it'd be really pretty with a little blue in there as well. So same thing, I could, you know, it could end up giving you a really cool background for a painting, or you could create some fun clouds, something like that. I think the last thing I want to show you is how another way I might use it for details. So let me do this, because that seems to be the main way I use it. Let's just paint rather, a flower. My favorite flower to paint. Let's add in my black-eyed Susans. I love these. They're in my backyard. My hummingbirds love them. I've had praying mantises in them. I love them. So I'm just going to create that little knob you see on them, like that. And then let's go in with our yellow. And create our petals. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll show you what I might do with a color pencil. So these are really some ways I use them. Let's see what this does. Let's go over this with maybe a little bit more blue, because that is really how I enjoy the pencils the most, is creating these beautiful layers. I just think they're so pretty. So we've got our purple we created there. Let's add a little blue. And look at that, it creates this glaze. Isn't that pretty? I think that's so beautiful. So once this dries, we can go in there and I'm gonna use my pencil. Let's see, let's use a brown pencil. And I could, it's pretty dry, add in some little detail lines. So I really do like the pencil for that. I think that's kind of handy. Something like that. And then I could even do really tiny little lines. Hopefully you can see that. So that's kind of a fun way to use them. Now I have seen people, this is the last one, use it. Where is my brush? So you could draw a petal. I'm running out of room here. And say, I'm leaving that a little bit dark so you can see it. And then let's go in and just wet that. And now, again, you could go in with your pencil. And hopefully you can see this before it dries. It's giving this soft line. It's kind of hard to see in the camera. I'll help it out a little bit. But if it's really wet, it's going to give you this nice soft line. Let's do a couple lines in the middle here. See how soft those are? And they really kind of blend, so it's not like that. It's much softer. Now this is already starting to dry, so you kind of see how that works. So that's another way, is putting the water down first and then adding the pencil onto it. You could even wet your pencil. So this is wet, and then maybe wet your pencil a bit, but again, be careful because you don't want to damage that tip. And see that, how soft that line is? It really kind of blurs. So just another way to play with them. And I encourage you, you know, play with them and see what you like to do. Let's see if I'm missing anything. You could do, let me show you the difference on hot pressed paper, because there is a big difference. So these are a few ways I might use them, but let me show you on the hot press. It's going to be a much smoother finish. So let's go for that. Let's start with some blue. Turning my pencil on its side. Like that. I'm going to add a little bit of darker blue down here. So I'm layering the pencils, which is really fun. And then I'm going to do a bit of green down here at the bottom. And I'm going to bring that up to the sky. Maybe a little yellow at the bottom. And then let's make this into like a little landscape. So going from light to dark. Now, I don't know if you can already tell how much it's just smoother, much smoother than when I did this on the cold press paper. So there you go. And it's gonna dry relatively quick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my dark pencil and create kind of a horizon line here. And because this is still wet, it's gonna kind of blur out, which I like. Then I might even go in with a dark green and color in some little trees in the background. Look at that, how fun. I could do a little path. And it's a little bit softer. There we go. Now, if I wanted to soften that up a bit, I could with my brush. And this, because it's hot press and so smooth, it dries quite quickly. So I haven't got a whole lot of time to kind of play with that. You can even see how it's moving the paint around. And I might just blend that a bit. So just our little trail here. And if I wanted, I could have even, I don't think it'll work now because that's not wet anymore, but I could have used that sandpaper. By the way, it is easier to activate the paint, re-wet it when you're on smooth paper, hot press paper. So let's just see if this shows up. Or maybe let's do purple. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of that right there, maybe a little right there. And that will continue to blend, but look at how fun that is. So see the little speckles? It looks like a little field of flowers in there. If I had, let me try something really quick. I don't know if I have a, I do. I'm just experimenting right now. Let's see if we could wet this. This may not work, guys. It is actually kind of. And see, this is why I encourage you, like, play with this stuff. See what happens. It's kind of hard to tell in the camera here, but look at that. Isn't that fun? So that is the difference with the hot press paper. And I'm going to show you a side-by-side here in a minute, but let me do one more example. I'm going to do that petal. There we go. And let's color in the bottom. And you're going to see how much more it flows. And then our blue at the top. There we go. And then I'll show you the two comparisons side by side. So again, working from top lightest to the darkest. And I think you'll have a little more time too to play with your colors on hot press because it's got that slick surface and it takes a little bit longer to dry. So if you can see here, I'm able to kind of move it around and play with it a little bit more. Okay. So there you go. So I don't know if you can tell here now, but this is much more texture. This is really, really smooth. All of these, a lot more texture to them. This is quite smooth. So I hope that was fun for you. I'd love to see what you guys do. I mean, I think there's so many fun ways to use watercolor pencils, and they're really portable. I mean, I really like that about them. I'm gonna add something here. Is their portability. You can bring them anywhere. You could do them in the car if you used a water pen. You could just fill your water pen. Let me see if I have one here. I'll show you. 1 second. Here we go. So this is a water pen. If you were driving in a car, on a bus, on a plane, you could fill the chamber here with water, and then you've got this little brush and you just squeeze this, and it says push here. This is the Meaden one, which I really like, the Meaden brand. So you twist this off, fill it with water, and you could go in and do things with this, and you wouldn't even have to bring with you a water dish that could spill if you're traveling or something like that. So I really like that aspect of pencils. They're just easy. There we go. So that was fun. I hope you give them a try. This Artisto brand, I'll link down below for you. And you know, play with these, see what you come up with. I really like this type of technique. I think it's really fun. Remember, the hot press is going to be smoother, it's going to dry quicker, and it is going to give you a little bit smoother effect because cold press paper does have a texture to it, a toothiness to it. So the paint is going to settle in and some of it's going to be on top and it's going to be a bit more textured. All right, everybody, glazing, by the way, glazing layers, fabulous for your color pencils. Okay, I hope that was fun. Hop on over to Patreon. I would love to see what you guys are doing. That's one of the great things, is not only you guys supporting me there, thank you very much, it helps me a lot with expenses, but I get to see your pictures there. So hop on over there and share your pictures. There's a free membership, or you can go up and you get more perks and fun things. And I'd love to see you and love to see what you guys are working on. I also have mini series over there that are free. And I'll be right here with lots of free content for the rest of you, and reminding you, darlings, you are an artist. I hope you're saying that out loud to yourself. I am an artist. I hope you're telling everybody, because you are. You are an artist. And I will see you all soon. Happy painting. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for you guys. And I will see you soon. Okay.